The garage smelled like motor oil and betrayal. I was under my cleaning van at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, wrench in hand, listening to my wife Talia scream at our 15-year-old daughter Gina through the thin walls of our row house. The argument had been going on for 20 minutes, something about curfew and respect, but then Gina's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "Dad's a loser anyway, Mom. You said so yourself. You're moving on with someone better. Erik's here half the time now." My wrench slipped, scraping my knuckles against the exhaust pipe. Erik Blaine, real estate broker, fitness fanatic, supposed friend of mine. The guy who'd been helping Talia network with her interior design clients. I rolled out from under the van and sat there on the cold garage floor, staring at the peeling paint on the walls. 22 years of marriage, 17 years building Wells Commercial Cleaning from nothing into a company with 12 employees and a fleet of 6 vehicles. All of it crumbling because my wife had decided I was extra weight. Through the window, I could see Talia's silhouette in our kitchen, gesturing wildly with her wine glass. She'd been drinking more lately, staying out later, coming home with stories about client meetings that ran until midnight. Her interior design business had taken off in the past 2 years, and with it came a whole new crowd of friends who looked at me like I was something they'd scrape off their designer shoes. The front door slammed. Gina's footsteps pounded up the stairs, then silence. I walked into the house. Talia was refilling her wine glass, her back to me. She'd changed since her business started thriving. Expensive highlights, clothes that cost more than my monthly truck payment, an attitude that made it clear she thought she was too good for this neighborhood, this house, this life we'd built together. "Everything okay?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She turned around, her face flushed from wine and anger. "Jordan, we need to talk." I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. "About what?" "About us. About this." She gestured around the kitchen with its outdated appliances and worn linoleum. "I've been thinking about divorce for a long time. I'm tired of you." The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "Just like that?" She snorted, actually snorted, like the idea of salvaging our marriage was ridiculous. "Just like that. I've outgrown this, Jordan. I've outgrown you. My clients live in million-dollar homes, drive luxury cars, vacation in Europe, and I come home to this." Another dismissive gesture. "This house you picked out. This neighborhood where we raised our daughter. Our daughter who's embarrassed by her father's blue-collar job. Because you taught her to be." Talia's laugh was cold. "I didn't have to teach her anything. She has eyes, Jordan. She can see the difference between success and this." I stared at my wife, this woman I'd loved since we were 19, who used to brag about my work ethic, who used to say she was proud that I'd built something from nothing. Now she looked at me like I was a stain on her designer life. "So what do you want?" I asked. "A divorce, a fresh start, a chance to build something real with someone who understands ambition." Someone like Erik, I thought but didn't say, not yet. "Fine," I said. "We'll talk to lawyers." She blinked, clearly surprised by my calm response. "Fine." I walked upstairs, past Gina's room where music thumped behind her closed door, and into our bedroom. Talia followed a few minutes later, but we didn't speak. She took the bathroom first, going through her elaborate nighttime routine while I sat on the edge of the bed, planning my next moves. 3 days. That's how long I gave myself to figure out exactly how deep this betrayal went and what I was going to do about it. The charity open house was Talia's idea of networking heaven. She'd decorated a sprawling colonial in the wealthy part of town, and half the city's elite would be there to admire her work and write checks for the children's hospital. She'd asked me to help with setup, probably to show off her supportive husband one last time before she pulled the trigger on our marriage. I loaded my van with folding tables and chairs from my warehouse, playing the part of the dutiful spouse while my mind raced through possibilities. 3 days since her announcement, and she'd been acting like nothing had changed. Humming while she got ready for work, chatting about weekend plans we both knew we'd never make. The house was a monument to everything Talia thought she deserved. Marble countertops, crystal chandeliers, a kitchen bigger than our entire first floor. I carried tables through the front door while she directed traffic like a general commanding troops. "Jordan, put those in the living room." "No, not there, by the windows." I bit back a sarcastic response and did as instructed. Her business partner, Vivian Drake, swept past me without acknowledgement. Vivian had never liked me, not since I'd fired her from my cleaning company 5 years ago for stealing supplies. She was the one who'd encouraged Talia's transformation, filling her head with ideas about what she deserved and who she should be associating with. While arranging chairs, I overheard Talia talking to a potential client near the kitchen island. The woman was admiring the crown molding when Talia's voice dropped to what she probably thought was a whisper. "This is exactly the kind of work I'll be focusing on once I'm free to relocate. I'm actually in the process of making some major life changes." "Oh?" "Let's just say I'm finally ready to cash out of some old investments and start fresh. There's someone special who's been very supportive through this transition." My hands tightened on the chair I was holding. Cash out. Like our marriage was a stock she'd grown tired of holding. "How exciting. Anyone I know?" "Erik Blaine from Prestige Properties. He's been invaluable in helping me understand my options." The women moved away, but I'd heard enough. I finished setting up and told Talia I was heading home, claiming I had paperwork to catch up on. She barely looked up from her conversation with a potential client. But instead of going home, I drove to the office supply store and bought a small voice recorder. Then I went home and did something I'd never imagined doing in 22 years of marriage. I searched my wife's things. Her purse was sitting on our dresser, an expensive leather bag that cost more than most people's rent. Inside, underneath her makeup and wallet, I found a second phone. A cheap prepaid cell that had no business being there. The recent calls list made my stomach turn. Erik's number appeared dozens of times, but there were others too. Numbers I didn't recognize. Text messages that made it clear this wasn't just an emotional affair. "Storage unit paid through next month. E says we should wait until after the holidays to make it official. Talk to lawyer. Postnup is worthless if we can prove abandonment. J has no idea. Still playing the devoted wife, so pathetic." I photographed everything, my hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. Then I carefully put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went downstairs to think. The postnuptial agreement. We'd signed it 3 years ago when I expanded the business and needed additional insurance coverage. Talia had barely glanced at it, trusting our lawyer's explanation that it was just financial protection in case the company got sued. But I remembered the infidelity clause, the section that voided spousal support if either party could prove adultery and financial deception. At the time, it had seemed like a formality. Now it felt like a gift from my past self. I spent the next 2 hours going through our financial records, tracing every joint account, every shared investment, every asset we'd accumulated together. What I found made me sick. Talia had been moving money. Small amounts at first, then larger chunks. Our savings account had been steadily drained over the past 6 months, the funds transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. She'd taken cash advances on credit cards I didn't know existed, using our house as collateral. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was robbing me blind. Coach Ray's boxing gym smelled like sweat and determination. I'd been coming here since I was 16, back when my biggest worry was making rent on my first apartment. Now, at 41, I needed the heavy bag more than ever. "You're hitting angry tonight," Ray said, watching me throw combinations that would have knocked out a heavyweight. "Want to talk about it?" Ray Martinez was 65, built like a fire hydrant, and had seen enough broken men come through his doors to recognize the signs. I'd known him for 25 years, and he was one of the few people I trusted completely. My wife's leaving me, I said between punches. For my friend Erik. Been planning it for months. The pretty boy real estate guy? Figured that was coming. I stopped mid-swing. What do you mean? Jordan, I've been watching people for 6 decades. Your wife's been different the last year. Dressing different, acting different. And that Erik character, he's got homewrecker written all over his spray-tanned face. Why didn't you say anything? Ray shrugged. Would you have believed me? Man's gotta see betrayal with his own eyes before he'll accept it. I told him about the phone, the money, the storage unit I'd tracked down using the address from her text messages. How I'd driven by it twice but hadn't worked up the courage to see what was inside. So what's your play? Ray asked. I'm thinking about it. Think fast. Woman like that, she's not going to wait around for you to get your head straight. She'll strike first, claim you abandoned her or got violent or whatever story sells best in court. He was right. Talia was smart, connected, and ruthless when she wanted something. If I didn't move soon, I'd find myself painted as the abusive husband who drove his successful wife into another man's arms. That night, I called my lawyer, Dennis Harper. We'd used him for business contracts, and I trusted his judgment. I explained the situation in clinical terms, focusing on the financial evidence rather than the emotional devastation. The postnup is solid, Dennis confirmed. If you can prove infidelity and financial deception, she gets nothing beyond what she brought into the marriage. But Jordan, you need ironclad evidence. Her lawyer will claim the phone was planted, the money transfers were authorized, whatever they have to do to break that agreement. I've got photos, bank records, recorded conversations. Get more. And whatever you do, don't let her know you're onto her. The moment she realizes you've discovered the affair, she'll start building a counter-narrative. I hung up and stared at our wedding photo on the nightstand. Talia in white, radiant and laughing, me in a rented tux that was too big around the shoulders. We looked so young, so certain that love would be enough to carry us through anything. Now she was upstairs on her real phone, probably telling Erik how pathetic I was, how eager she was to start their new life together with my money. I opened my laptop and started typing. If Talia wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real strategy looked like. First, I transferred my business assets into a new LLC, one that legally separated my company from our marital property. It was a complex process, but I'd been planning to restructure anyway for tax purposes. Now it served a dual function. Second, I documented everything. Every suspicious transaction, every late night, every lie she'd told about working late. I created a timeline that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Third, I hired a private investigator. Marcus Webb came recommended by Dennis, a former cop who specialized in domestic cases. His job was simple: follow Talia and Erik, photograph everything, and build an unshakable case for adultery. How long do you need? Marcus asked when we met at a diner across town. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I want this airtight. Consider it done. But Jordan, be ready for what I might find. Sometimes the truth is worse than we imagine. He was right about that. When Marcus called me a week later, his voice was grim. You need to see this, he said. Meet me at the storage facility on Elm Street. Bring bolt cutters. The storage unit was bigger than I'd expected, 10 by 20 feet of my wife's secret life. Marcus had already cut the lock. Apparently Talia had missed a payment, and the facility was planning to auction the contents anyway. Inside, I found the blueprint for my destruction. Boxes of financial records dating back 2 years, bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of, real estate listings for condos in Florida, California, and North Carolina, a folder labeled Divorce Strategy that made me freeze. She's been planning this for a long time, Marcus said, photographing everything with a professional camera. Look at this. He handed me a notebook in Talia's handwriting. Page after page of calculations, asset valuations, and legal strategies. She'd researched everything: my business value, our property equity, even my retirement accounts. But the most damaging section was her character assassination plan. Jordan's drinking has gotten worse. Violent outbursts, threatened me multiple times. Gina is afraid of him. None of it was true, but it was detailed and convincing. She'd even documented fake incidents, complete with dates and supposed witnesses. "There's more," Marcus said, pointing to a box in the corner. Love letters from Erik, going back 18 months, and financial records showing they've been planning to buy a house together in North Carolina. I read through Erik's letters, each one more nauseating than the last. He called me the obstacle and referred to our marriage as Talia's unfortunate first draft. They'd already picked out furniture for their new life, already planned vacations with my money. But the worst discovery was at the bottom of the box, a DNA test result for Gina dated 6 months ago. According to the lab, there was a 99.7% chance that Erik Blaine was her biological father, my daughter, the girl I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed for. She wasn't mine. I sat down hard on a plastic crate, the papers scattered around me like debris from an explosion. Marcus gave me space to process, continuing to photograph evidence while I tried to understand how completely I'd been fooled. "How long have you known?" I asked when I could trust my voice. "About the paternity?" "Just found out today when I opened that envelope." "Jordan, I'm sorry. 16 years. I've been raising another man's child for 16 years. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I looked around the storage unit at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, my friend's treachery, and my daughter's true parentage. The rage I felt was clean and pure, like a flame burning away everything unnecessary. "I'm going to destroy them," I said quietly. "All of them." "Legally?" "Completely legally. They want to play games? I'll show them what happens when you underestimate a blue-collar guy who's got nothing left to lose." That night, I went home and acted normal. Talia was in the living room working on her laptop, probably planning more ways to spend my money. Gina was upstairs talking on the phone about some boy from school. Everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but now I saw it all clearly. The expensive wine Talia was drinking, bought with money she'd stolen from our savings. The designer clothes hanging in our closet, purchased with credit cards she'd opened in my name. Even Gina's attitude toward me made sense now. She'd been raised by her biological father to see me as a temporary inconvenience. "How was your day?" Talia asked, without looking up from her screen. "Productive," I said. "Very productive." She smiled absently and went back to typing, probably messaging Erik about their latest scheme. I went upstairs and started packing. Not everything. I didn't want to tip them off. Just the essentials and a few items with sentimental value. Everything else could burn for all I cared. Tomorrow I would file for divorce. The day after that, I would start dismantling their carefully constructed fantasy piece by piece. They thought they were so smart, so sophisticated, so much better than the working-class man they'd been manipulating. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. I laid the divorce papers on our kitchen table at exactly 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning, arranged in neat stacks like a business presentation. Talia was at the coffee maker, humming some song I didn't recognize, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "What's all this?" she asked, glancing over with mild curiosity. "Divorce papers, financial disclosures, asset inventories, everything you've been wanting." She set down her coffee cup and picked up the top document, her expression shifting from confusion to concern as she read. I watched her face change as the reality hit her. This wasn't some emotional outburst she could manipulate or delay. This was legal, official, and comprehensive. "Jordan, what are you doing? We agreed to talk about this, to maybe try counseling first." "We never agreed to anything. You said you wanted a divorce, and I'm giving you one." She flipped through the pages, her frown deepening. "What's this about a postnuptial agreement? I don't remember signing anything like this." "August 15th, 3 years ago, right after I expanded the business. Your signature is notarized on page 12. Talia found the page and stared at her own signature like it was written in a foreign language. I thought this was just insurance paperwork. It was. Insurance against exactly what you've been doing for the past 18 months. Her face went pale. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and played a recording I'd made the night before, using the voice recorder I'd hidden in her purse. Her own voice filled the kitchen, crystal clear. Jordan's so pathetic. He has no idea what's coming. Erik and I have been planning this for months. Once the divorce goes through, we'll have enough money to buy that place in Asheville and start over properly. Talia's coffee cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the tile floor. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself from my cheating wife and her boyfriend. Erik and I are just friends. You're being paranoid. I placed a manila envelope on the table and slid out a stack of photographs. Marcus had done excellent work. Crystal clear images of Talia and Erik kissing in restaurant booths, holding hands at the movie theater, entering and leaving the Marriott downtown on Tuesday afternoons. Just friends, I repeated. Is that what you call it when friends spend 2 hours in a hotel room every week? Talia stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Jordan, I can explain. Don't bother. I know about the storage unit. I know about the money you've been stealing. I know about the house you and Erik picked out in North Carolina. With each revelation, she seemed to shrink smaller. The confident, sophisticated woman who'd been planning my destruction was disappearing, replaced by someone who looked cornered and desperate. And I know about Gina, I said quietly. That broke her completely. She collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. Oh God, Jordan, please, let me explain. 16 years, Talia. 16 years I've been raising Erik's daughter thinking she was mine. 16 years of birthday parties and school plays and father-daughter dances, while you and your boyfriend laughed at the stupid husband who didn't know he was being played. It wasn't like that. I loved you. I still love you. You love my money. You love the life I built for you. But you don't love me, and you haven't for a long time. She tried to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Jordan, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, figure out how to rebuild. Read page 18 of the divorce filing. She fumbled through the papers until she found the right page, then read aloud in a shaking voice. In accordance with the postnuptial agreement dated August 15, 2021, any claim to spousal support or division of marital assets is voided in cases of proven adultery and financial deception. What does that mean? It means you get nothing. No alimony, no share of the business, no claim to this house or my retirement accounts. You get whatever you brought into the marriage 16 years ago, plus any assets you can prove you purchased with your own money. Talia's face went white. That's impossible. I'm entitled to half of everything. Not according to the agreement you signed, not when you've been committing adultery and stealing marital assets. She stood up so fast her chair fell over backward. You can't do this. I'll fight it. I'll hire the best lawyer in the state. With what money? I closed all the joint accounts yesterday, canceled the credit cards you opened in my name. Your access to my assets ended the moment I filed these papers. The rage that followed was spectacular. Talia screamed, threw her coffee mug at the wall, called me every name she could think of. She threatened to ruin my business, turn Gina against me, make me pay for humiliating her. How dare you? She shrieked. After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed, this is how you repay me. What exactly have you sacrificed, Talia? Your integrity, your marriage vows, the trust of the man who loved you? I built my business from nothing. I made something of myself despite being married to a glorified janitor. There it was. The truth she'd been hiding behind her fake smiles and manipulative tears. In her mind, I was beneath her, unworthy of her success, an embarrassment she'd finally found the courage to discard. You're right, I said calmly. You did build something, and now you can enjoy it without the burden of being married to a glorified janitor. I picked up my keys and headed for the door. Behind me, Talia was still screaming, but her words had lost their power to hurt me. She was just noise now, the sound of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "To work. Some of us still have jobs to do." I left her standing in the wreckage of her kitchen, surrounded by broken coffee cups and shattered dreams. It was the last conversation we would have as husband and wife. The block party was Talia's last desperate attempt to salvage her reputation. 3 weeks after I'd filed for divorce, the gossip mill was working overtime. Everyone in our neighborhood knew about the affair, the financial deception, and the paternity scandal. Talia thought a public appearance at the annual summer barbecue would give her a chance to control the narrative. She was wrong. I arrived at the community park at exactly 2 o'clock, carrying a wireless microphone I'd borrowed from my friend who ran a DJ business. The party was in full swing, families spread across picnic tables, kids running through sprinklers, neighbors catching up on the latest drama. Talia was holding court near the dessert table, surrounded by a small group of women who were pretending to be sympathetic while obviously fishing for more details. She'd dressed carefully for the occasion: conservative blouse, modest skirt, minimal makeup, the picture of a wronged wife trying to maintain her dignity. Erik was there too, lurking near the beer cooler like he belonged. He'd been avoiding me since the divorce papers were filed, but apparently Talia had convinced him that a show of solidarity would help their case. He kept glancing in my direction, probably wondering if I was going to cause a scene. I was. At exactly 2:30, I walked over to the small stage where the mayor usually gave his annual speech about community values. The microphone was already set up, connected to speakers that could be heard throughout the park. "Excuse me," I said, tapping the mic to get everyone's attention. "Could I have a moment?" The crowd gradually quieted, turning to look at me with expressions ranging from curious to concerned. Everyone knew about the divorce, but they didn't know the full story yet. "I want to thank everyone for their support during this difficult time," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the park. "Divorce is never easy, especially when it involves betrayal, theft, and 16 years of lies." Talia's face went rigid. She started moving toward the stage, but Erik grabbed her arm, probably realizing that any attempt to stop me would only make things worse. "Most of you know my wife Talia has been having an affair with Erik Blaine. What you don't know is that they've been planning to steal my life savings and move to North Carolina together. What you also don't know is that my daughter Gina isn't actually my daughter." The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Cell phones came out as people started recording. This was the kind of neighborhood drama that would be talked about for years. "I have DNA evidence proving that Erik is Gina's biological father. I have financial records showing that Talia has stolen over $40,000 from our joint accounts. I have photographs and recordings documenting their affair going back 18 months. I pulled out a folder and held it up. It's all here. Every lie, every betrayal, every scheme they thought they could get away with." Talia finally broke free from Erik's grip and rushed toward the stage. "Jordan, stop this! You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself?" I laughed into the microphone. "Talia, you've been sleeping with my friend, stealing my money and lying about our daughter's paternity for 16 years. But I'm the one who should be embarrassed?" The crowd was riveted now. This was better than any soap opera, and it was happening right in front of them. "You want to know what's really embarrassing?" I continued. "What's embarrassing is that I trusted you. What's embarrassing is that I believed your lies for so long. What's embarrassing is that I actually thought our marriage meant something to you." Erik finally found his courage and stepped forward. "That's enough, Jordan. You're making a fool of yourself." I turned to face him, and the microphone picked up every word. "Erik, you've been sleeping with my wife, planning to steal my money, and lying about being my daughter's father for 16 years. And you think I'm the fool?" "Gina is my daughter," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent park. "She always has been." The admission hung in the air like a bomb, Even Erik seemed to realize he'd just confessed to the entire neighborhood, but it was too late to take it back. "Thank you for that confession," I said. "I'm sure my lawyer will find it very useful." I turned back to the crowd, many of whom were openly staring at Talia and Erik with expressions of disgust and fascination. The divorce will be final next week. Thanks to the postnuptial agreement my wife signed, she won't be getting a penny of my money or assets. She'll be starting her new life with Erik exactly the way she deserves, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the reputation she's earned. Talia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks as she realized how completely she'd been outmaneuvered. "You bastard," she whispered, but the microphone caught it. "Maybe," I agreed, "but I'm an honest bastard who never cheated on his wife or stole from his family." I set the microphone back on its stand and walked down from the stage. The crowd parted in front of me like I was Moses crossing the Red Sea. Some people nodded approvingly, others looked uncomfortable, but everyone was watching. As I reached my truck, Erik made his final mistake. He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around, his face red with rage and humiliation. "You think you're so smart," he snarled, "but you're still just a pathetic loser who couldn't keep his wife happy." I looked at him for a long moment, this man who'd destroyed my family and stolen 16 years of my life. Then I smiled and delivered the line I'd been saving for exactly this moment. "Erik, I may be a loser, but at least I'm not the kind of man who has to steal another man's wife and money to feel successful. Enjoy your new life with Talia. You deserve each other." I got in my truck and drove away, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their reputations while the entire neighborhood watched and recorded every moment. The divorce was finalized 6 days later. Talia got nothing. Erik's real estate license was suspended pending an investigation into his financial dealings with my wife. Gina moved in with them in a cheap apartment across town, finally living with her real father. I kept the house, the business, and my self-respect. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's simply telling the truth and letting people draw their own conclusions. They wanted to destroy me, but instead, they destroyed themselves. And I didn't have to break a single law to watch it happen. Justice isn't always swift, but when it comes, it's beautiful to behold.